Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast may contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews, be sure to check out our show on YouTube. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show.
Is this a holdup? It's a movie review. My name is Eastwood, Clint Eastwood, and as always, my wiser, older partner in crime, Dave. What's going on, brother?
Why do I have to be the wiser older? I'm only older than you by a couple of months. Jeez.
This is true. And this is episode 172, and in this episode, season 3 of Cobra Kai is out and done. David and I are chomping at the bit to chop it up. And then part 3 in the 3-part trilogy, which is Back to the Future. David and I are going to talk about Back to the Future Part 3. And how are you, brother?
It has been an interesting week, to say the least, but I'm glad to have something relatively brainless to talk about, as opposed to the reality, which is the whole reason why movies actually exist, if you ask me.
Well said, absolutely. I could definitely use a pleasant distraction from we kind of thought 2020, we were just hoping that craziness was going to be in the past, and here we are a couple days into 2021, and so far it's outdoing 2020 by a substantial margin. So I think we need to talk about some movies, don't you?
I agree. Let's get to it.
Shut up, Bobby! Look at him, Dutch! He can't even stand up! That don't mean squat!
Johnny,
leave
leave him alone, man. He's had enough.
I'll decide when he's had enough, man.
Play it wrong!
It never really mattered. I was always under control. Monkey.
Now, this is going to be a tough one for everybody to get behind. So just, bear with me on this one. It was longer than it was in 2007. A band called No More Kings did a music video for a song called "Sweep the Leg." Now, "Sweep the Leg" was based on the infamous line from The Karate Kid, where Kreese told Johnny to sweep Daniel's injured leg. They did a music video, and can I just say, Google No More Kings Sweep the Leg music video and just enjoy. Okay? just enjoy. Okay? It was directed by William Zabka, and it had, he brought back his entire gang from The Karate Kid to be in it, to cameo in it. They had Martin Kove back in it, and an even little, surprise cameo near the end with Ralph Macchio. And when I first heard about the Cobra Kai TV series, this video popped into my head, thinking to myself, that video was crazy. They're really going to try to do a TV series sort of semi-based on that music video? So I was skeptical. It looked ridiculous. And then I loved the first season. Okay. Wow. That was wow. I was not expecting that. And so, okay, fine. Season 2. Maybe season 2 they'll screw it up. Nope. No, they didn't. We reviewed that as well, I believe. And finally, no longer on YouTube, now on Netflix, season 3 of Cobra Kai has come. And Joe and I are now about to... Well, Joe, tell me, what are your feelings now that I've given that long-ass preamble?
That was a lengthy intro, my friend, and that's but it was I do thank you for showing me that video, and it was definitely funny. Actually, kind of watching the video made me sort of say to myself, boy, they really should have done this 10 years ago, because I kind of feel like as short as 10 years ago, those guys looked a lot younger, to the point where it was like, wow, they look not that different from how they looked in the 80s, frankly. Anyway, so Cobra Kai season 3, pretty much as always, it has been very, very solid. And I will say the show has been incredibly consistent. 3 whole seasons, and honestly, it's again, I feel like the same kind of quirks in the first season are the same quirks in the third season. So yeah, it's the first thing that sort of jumps at me is that it's wildly consistent. With that said, I loved most of it. I absolutely positively, I'm pretty much loving anything that has to do with Johnny and Daniel. In fact, I will say that my favorite episode, probably by a substantial margin, was the episode where Daniel goes back to Okinawa. I was really, really pleasantly surprised by that. Not even surprised. I mean, they did kind of give you a lot of hints in the trailer as to what was coming, but the ride was very fun, and I loved the appearance of the young girl. And I have to tell you, as soon as I saw her, I was pretty shocked. I said, "That's that girl." I knew right away that was who that was, and because it looked like her. And I was very happy to find out, yes, indeed, that was played by the same actress. So I was, again, not at all surprised. With that, and I also should mention, too, I liked Elizabeth Shue's appearance. I didn't love it kind of the way I was expecting to, but we'll get back to that. Anyway, so the season was definitely solid, but I also have to throw in that I'm getting a tad bored with the kind of tween karate soap opera that goes on with the kids. I liked it. I've always liked this as a way to sort of offset. I mean, you couldn't just do a whole show about Johnny and Daniel, obviously. I mean, the kids stuff is good. But it is kind of getting to where I'm getting a tad bored. First of all, it's getting way over the top with the fight scenes. I kind of thought the big brawl at the high school at the end of the second season was probably about as crazy as I wanted to see. I mean, it is getting where you're more or less just making kung fu movies with young kids who don't look at all equipped to be doing the moves that they're doing. I mean, we watch like a karate movie, a kung fu movie, and you see people getting their asses handed to them. Our heroes can get, fall and smash themselves and get back up because we know it's kind of over the top and crazy. Here, I'm watching injuries that look like, besides the big injuries that was sort of the showstopper at the end of the second season, I'm watching these kids do things that, again, any other normal kid would be crying on the ground. I would be crying on the ground, but they're all bouncing around and beating each other up, and they can keep going forever without getting winded. And now we're kind of getting into sort of professional wrestling territory where the heroes this week are the villains next week, and vice versa. And I'm kind of, honestly, it's getting a little silly. I kind of thought the big finale where they literally destroyed the LaRusso's home. I'm like, all right, now. It's like I can't tell if the film wants to be. I mean, I think everything about the show is pretty tongue in cheek. I think there is a wink to the audience. We're having fun. We're not getting too serious about this, but it does try to keep itself more or less grounded in the real world. In fact, I mean, sort of the whole beauty of it is that you're going back and revisiting one-dimensional characters and actually sort of giving them some depth, some actual life, some life experience, etc. So I kind of find that whole thing is being offset by the very thin characters. I mean, some of these kids are just evil for the sake of being evil. Honestly, like professional wrestling, and quite frankly, they're sort of taking Kreese, the character, down this road where on one hand they're trying to sort of flesh him out a bit. On the other hand, it's like, so is he just the devil? Like, is he just bad for the sake of being bad? I just want to cause mischief and to ruin people's lives. So it's getting a tad confusing on that level. And again, honestly, the when the kids literally trashed LaRusso's home, any normal, like, the police would have been at the door in 20 minutes. There would have been cops, there would have been arrests, all of these kids would have been taken in, etc. So it's kind of getting. I mean, when the kid goes outside, oh yeah, I hear your cat outside, and he walks outside. 2 seconds later, comes flying through the window. I'm like, all right, this is really kind of getting. Like, I know it's the season finale, but this is really getting a little nutty. So anyway, that's kind of my thoughts. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and now that I've sucked all the air out of the room, I'm dying to hear what you thought of it.
I agree with a lot of what you say, but the one thing is, I agree that the show works best when it focuses on Daniel and Johnny. I feel that they are actually the best parts of it. I feel the depth that they've given to the character of Johnny throughout these past couple of seasons have been welcome. One of the things that I enjoyed about it, and I mentioned this to you in the text, is that in a weird way, I regret that we hadn't reviewed the Karate Kid movies before we started watching this show. Because I feel like the show is taking, all that, and even taking the stuff that was me. Like, who would have thought, like, I remember the first time I saw the Karate Kid 2, and, Daniel telling Mr. Miyagi, oh, she left me for some jock, some UCLA jock. I was like, that didn't feel right. And I remember even thinking it back then. It's like, that doesn't feel like something that her character would do. That's a radical change for her. So to have them come back and explain that, Daniel was just being, overly emotional about the whole situation, I found was nice. I was like, okay, thank you for the little bit of redemption for her character, because I did feel that was kind of out of character. I loved the callbacks, and honestly, I don't have a problem. The way I look at this series is this is kind of a bridge between the children of the 80s and the children of the 2000s.
Yeah.
Okay? We, as the children of the 80s, appreciate the stories it's telling with regards to Daniel and Johnny and all that other stuff. And I guarantee you that anybody in the 20 to 20 in the 20-year-old range that's watching the show, they're loving the drama with the kids, and they're loving the silly action and stuff like that with the kids. And that's what makes this show so amazing. It has just enough in it to appeal to two completely different generations of kids. And I consider us kids because this is what we grew up with.
Yeah.
And I think that it works. And I think that, in spite of that, I agree with you. It is over the top, but you forgive it, because it's like, okay, if having to deal with the over top, fights with these kids means I get more scenes like, Daniel meeting the little girl he saved from the tower and her rescuing him and stuff like that, I'm on board. I'll take that. I'll take that hit.
Yeah.
I'll absolutely take that hit. One of my favorite thing that happened in this season, I mean, there was a lot of really, really awesome little cool things that happened this season, but one of the things I really, really liked, I loved the fake out with the flashback with Kreese, where, he meets up with a bunch of people and he's got that one guy with the dark hair and the ponytail and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's like, there's Terry right there, and then bang, it's like, whoa, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've heard the term subvert expectations before, but thank you for actually demonstrate how to do that.
Well, actually, yeah. Interestingly, that whole thing with young Kreese was loaded with subverted expectations. First of all, you saw the car that looked like the car that Miyagi ends up with. Whether or not that's the same car, I mean, it certainly could be written away that it is. But there was the car, and it was like, oh, but it's somebody else. Okay. Then there's the one bully, which you figure, well, that's got to be Kreese. And then it turns out to be the other guy. Before we've even left the diner, they're already subverting. So, yes, they kind of kept that going for a while. It was kind of interesting.
I live in a day and age where, like, the baddest of the bad 80s stereotypical villain is getting a backstory. And the funny part is it's not even done in a sympathetic, like, it's sympathetic at first, but then, like, he makes his choice and you realize, some people are just born bad, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and that is interesting, because you're right. I'm sort of perplexed by it, because I sort of feel like on one hand, they're going through the effort to sort of humanize and show why he's a piece of shit. But frankly, when you cut back to him today, it doesn't really give you any sympathy. Like, it does not make you feel like he's any less of a piece of shit than he is. So part of me is kind of looking at this saying, well, is this just filler? I mean, I suppose it's worth exploring, but I don't see how it's making me feel any different about his character today.
I don't think it's me too. I think honestly, it serves as a warning, if you ask me. You know, because it's one thing when, you know, oh, he's a karate master and, you know, he's killed in the line of duty, blah, 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 blah. No, it showed him murdering.
Yeah.
It establishes that he is a murderer. He's not just a guy who kills in self-defense or in war and stuff like that, which, you know, to me, like when they say, oh, you know, a person came back from war, they killed people and so on and so forth. It's like, yeah, that's war. You do what you got to do. Yeah. You know, that was outright blatant murder.
Yeah.
Of the guy that of the captain. Outright blatant murder.
Did you catch who played him, by the way?
He looked familiar, but I thought at first that it was frickin' Farmer Ted from 16 Candles, but it's not. It's a different actor.
It is? I thought for sure that's exactly who it was.
I thought that too at first. I was like, oh my God, did they get Farmer Ted to play? You know, I'm sorry. I keep calling him Farmer Ted. Oh God, what is his name, Joe?
Anthony Michael Hall.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know why my brain wasn't doing it. No, it was played by an actor named Terry Serpico.
Oh. I thought for sure that was him.
That's how much he looked like him. And it's not the first time I thought. The minute he turned up, I was like, oh my God, Farmer Ted and everything. And I looked at it, I was like, oh, not Farmer Ted. Interesting. It's like, you know what? I get the feeling that maybe they were kind of hoping to get Anthony Michael Hall, and Anthony Michael Hall turned him down. It's like, well, screw it. We'll get a look-alike.
Yeah, that could be. I really thought that was him. And not only that, because I had seen something recently, it was probably about a year ago, where they did this little reunion of the cast of Weird Science, and there he was, and I was like, wow, he looks different. I mean, I had just seen him pretty recently. But yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. That is a different guy. Okay.
What can you do?
Yeah. By the way, when that Vietnam stuff was kicking in, I had just a half a second where I said to myself, "Oh my God, they're going to tie this into the Rambo universe. They're going to tie this in with Rambo because he played the part." I thought first I was like, "Oh my God, they're going to make it one connected world," and I was like, "Oh no, but that can't be because his character was whatever." So, but I did have a flash where I thought that was possible.
I didn't think they were going to go that far. All told, a very enjoyable season, and like seriously, the minute it was over, after he made his little call, hey, remember that favor I used? So we know that Terry's coming in next season.
Yeah, sure.
Which I guess was, destined.
Yeah, I do really like how they are bringing in aspects of all of the films, and I think that is pretty, again, very, very smart. There's nothing that they seem to be distancing themselves from, and I like that a lot. They're embracing the whole series. So yeah, I kind of feel like when that happens, which I agree with you, it's pretty much probably a done deal at this point. It'll feel pretty cool. What did you think of the season finale with the return of Elizabeth Shue?
It was very nice for the filling in of the backstory, I admit, but it wasn't quite the bombshell that I thought it was going to be. About the only thing that I was really, really happy about was that, he had just fooled around with Miguel's mom and everything like that, and I thought like, oh God, he's going to blow it with Miguel's mom, and it was a great moment of maturity for Johnny to realize, you know what, the past is the past, and it's I feel like, while it wasn't like the bombshell that I thought it was going to be, it was the impetus for closure for Johnny that has fundamentally changed his character. I mean, for God's sakes, it ends with him teaming up with frickin' Daniel to do karate together. And I can't wait to see the fight for, what they're going to call it. Eagle Dog Karate or something like that.
I heard, I was watching some YouTube video and somebody had already made like a joking. So they're going to combine and it's going to be called Miyagi Fang, and they had a picture of Mr. Miyagi with fangs sticking out. I did chuckle at the Hawk Fang dojo. I was like, oh, all right. Yeah. So, well, I'll tell you, I kind of found that to be just a sort of. On one hand, I was eating it up, and on another hand, I kind of felt like it was a little flat, and I couldn't quite put my finger on why. And I remember when they first show her character, like they show her house, which is the same house, and I believe they showed her mother, who I'm pretty sure is the same actress even. So I thought, again, that was cool. And then they sort of pan around, and there's Allie sort of just chilling on the couch. And I remember thinking it was sort of like, did she just get there? Like it looked like she just kicked off her shoes and kind of was sitting on the couch without being too comfortable. And I remember kind of feeling like something's just a tad awkward about it. And then kind of the, like I was sort of surprised how this went, because I mean, they sort of did clarify that she had just split up with her husband, I guess. But as you were sort of watching the episode play out, it was like, wow, Allie's pretty thirsty. And I just kind of thought that was a little weird. I kind of figured Johnny would be the one doing a little too much chasing, and she might have just sort of like calmed him down a little bit. But it was kind of the other way around, where she was all over him. And so I was sort of sitting there feeling like, is this as satisfying as this could have been? I'm not really sure. But I kind of felt like they sort of went, I wish she showed up a little earlier. Like I kind of felt like her presence should have been maybe at least 2, if not more, episodes. Like I felt like they brought her in and we sort of burned through this arc very quickly. And I'm not really sure why. Like I felt like they could have dragged this out a little bit more. Like, I mean, honestly, she shows up, her and Johnny meet. They're at the fun park from the first movie. Then they end up at the country club for the first movie, where it's her and him and Daniel. And it's like, this could have, again, you could have stretched that out a little bit more. I don't see why we had to sort of rush through her so quickly. But kind of a minor quibble, I suppose. But yeah, again, not quite the home run it could have been.
Agreed. I still appreciate the fact that it put closure on the one story arc from the trilogy that I didn't feel was right. But other than that, yeah, it wasn't quite the momentous moment that I thought it was. I'm I'm hoping that maybe the Terry appearance will be the momentous thing, because that is kind of, dude, we can't review these movies now without this show tainting our review of it.
Well, yeah, I guess that's an interesting point. You're absolutely right. And maybe we should have done the films first. You're absolutely correct. You're kind of hitting it on the head when you're saying, like, is it even worth doing those reviews at this point? Yeah, it's, again, the whole thing is thoroughly enjoyable. Yeah, I am very curious to see where they go for the next season. I mean, this show is a fantastic binge, and I did sit down and burn through the entire season in one night. I couldn't not do it, and I was up till 3:00 in the morning watching it. So yeah, it is just that good.
I agree. I would call this an 8 of a season out of 10.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd give it an 8. I'd say this was a solid. It remains a solid B+ experience, frankly. And it's funny because, again, it's like we said, the first season, it's nostalgia done right, And I wish other franchises would sort of take note. Agreed.
Absolutely. Great show, everybody. Please watch, especially if you're Karate Kid fans.
From out of the west, in a cloud of dust, a thunder of hooves, and a mighty...
Great Scott!
I know, this is heavy.
Indians!
This summer, Marty and Doc go back one more time for their greatest adventure of all. Doc's living in the past.
Don't try it, Tenant!
But he's about to be history.
What kind of a future do you call that?
I'm going back to 1885 and I'm bringing you home.
Stranded in 1955, Marty McFly learns about the death of Doc Brown in 1885 and must travel back in time to save him. With no fuel readily available for the DeLorean, the two must figure out how to escape the Old West before Emmett is murdered. Written by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, directed by Robert Zemeckis. Back to the Future, Part 3. So, I kind of feel like Zemeckis and Gale made this into a trilogy on the fly, pun not intended. And as I was watching this, here's the weird part about it. I kind of like it, but it's empty. It's the first Back to the Future is a very hard act to follow. We saw that when we saw Back to the Future 2. And this one is even a whole other level of hard act to follow. Okay? You know, you would think that the idea of being trapped in 1885 before there's, you know, a lot of technology available, et cetera, so on and so forth, you know, would be interesting, but I don't feel that they made it interesting enough. I still love, you know, the relationship between Marty and Doc, and I thought that was going nicely. I just, that's really what it is. Just,
Yeah. I will say this, watching this show, or excuse me, watching this movie again, it kind of encouraged me to watch my first episode of Rick and Morty, which I did last night.
Oh, interesting. Go on.
And I mean, it's a good show. I got a kick out of it, and I kind of like how it's. I mean, you can see how the Rick and Morty is sort of like a loose goof on Doc Brown and Marty. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, honestly, even as I was sort of jumping into this movie, even as I was like, oh yeah, I got to watch this movie before we review it, and I popped it on, and I was like, boy, I forgot just how long it's been since I've actually seen this. In fact, I don't think I've seen it at all since I saw it in the theater. And honestly, yeah, out of all of them, it is the one that is by far the most forgettable. Like, you just forget this movie exists. It's almost like everyone acknowledges that the original is a classic. It is a, you know, a film that will always go down as one of the greatest movies of all time, I think. And then the second one was kind of just a sequel to sort of just kind of, you know, jump on the coattails of the first one, do a little bit more, revisit the first one, etc. Then you got this weird third one, which just sort of sits out there on its own and is kind of its own animal. It's just like, I mean, what's weird to me about this one is that you honestly could have, I mean, you could have done anything for your third film. I mean, and it's weird because you know very well when they made the second one. I mean, there's little Easter eggs or hints all over the place, basically telling you that the third one is coming, and you know it's going to be the West because there was a whole bunch of hints in the second one. Mm-hmm. But yeah, honestly, you look at this one and you say to yourself, well, they really could have done anything. I mean, Doc could have gotten into that car and just gone literally at any time or multiple times. Like, you didn't have to do just one, era. He goes to the Old West. That's it. And we just it's Doc and Marty in the Old West for 2 hours. Okay. I mean, it's fine. Nothing wrong with it. But yeah, you're right. It just sort of has this feel. Well, first of all, honestly, when you're watching it, you're saying to yourself, and it's funny because the movie is only 1 year after the second one. I mean, it was very obvious that they they waited. I think it was 89 that the second one finally happened. So it was a nice little 4-year gap in between, and then they did this one very soon after. It was basically like a 2-parter.
Yeah, they filmed them back to back, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's right. It's pretty obvious that they pretty much filmed these back to back. Right, this one was 1990. So, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of mildly frustrating as you're watching this because, again, they're doing the same gags. And honestly, I mean, the first sequel, the second film, you watch it and you're sort of, all they're really doing is paying homage to all the things they did in the first one. Most of the gags are happening again, and they're going back and literally going back to scenes that they did in the first one, kind of paying tribute to it. And it's, well, here we're now we're in a totally different setting, so it should be pretty fresh. And there are a lot of things about it that are. But then you start seeing the same gags. The cowboy version of Biff walks into the bar. Hey, McFly! Like, good Lord, we're doing that a third time now, and it's, boy, is it getting old. So on one hand, it's a pretty harmless, fun little movie. It's clever, but on the other hand, I'm seeing, I mean, the principal now is the sheriff or the marshal, whatever. I mean, it's a lot of the same shtick. You got Marty's ancestors now. He wakes up in the bed. You're safe and sound right here in wherever. Like, really, like, I mean, it's really kind of getting tiring, and you're starting to, like, your brain is processing, going, wait a second. So the mother looks exactly like his mother. The father looks exactly like the father. And this is how many generations ago, and I mean, like, again, are they inbred? Like, is the mother the ancestor of the mother, and the father is the ancestor of the father? So, yeah, it's all getting pretty played out. In fact, I noticed in this one, I was kind of expecting Huey Lewis at the end, but they kind of had given up on Huey Lewis because, I mean, again, this is 5 years after the song was big.
But they had ZZ Top. They had ZZ Top.
Yeah, I did. I noticed that, and I read out, and they show up at the actual band shows up, and they do the shtick where they're spinning the things around. It's like, yeah, that was cute, funny, all right. So yeah, honestly, it's kind of, it's just wearing a little thin at this point. So for the most part, it's fun and harmless, but I can't say I was doing cartwheels watching it either. I will say this: the ending. By the time the ending came and they were doing the train bit, I was sort of in it. I was into it. I was enjoying it. I remember saying to myself, "Oh yeah, I forgot. This is pretty well done." It kind of gives you that kind of little hair-raising moments of I mean, like, the first film had the big climax was Marty actually going back in time. And you were kind of, everything was like just a hair away from going completely wrong. So you really were kind of at the edge of your seat. As I was watching this, I was feeling a little bit more of that. I felt like the second one had none of that. This one felt more like it again. And again, totally different idea. So it was reasonably fresh. I mean, the whole experiment is not a waste of time by any stretch. It's pretty good, but yeah, like you said, there's the kind of to it, and I kind of felt like, as much as I didn't have a problem with it this time, I could see why I haven't seen it in years.
Yeah, I didn't. It's a pretty painting. I mean, yeah. There is visually there's some prettiness in it. And yes, I agree 100% with you. I actually still found the train sequence at the end to be a nice little action beat. I enjoyed it a lot. I was like, wow, okay, yeah, where was this missing from the rest of the movie? But the sense of urgency, the whole, the first movie had this whole thing with the countdown to Marty, disappearing and everything like that, which was, fine, everything like that. And they tried to, do that here with the picture of the gravestone and everything like that. And it was just, I mean, if their whole point was to say, the future is not written and you can make of your want for yourself, I kind of feel like Zemeckis was like, I want to make a Western. I made a movie in the future. I made a movie in the 50s, and now I want to make a Western. It was as simple as that. There was no actual line of getting there. There was just, I want to make a Western. And as a Western, I guess it's okay. I lost a lot of the urgency. I lost a lot of the whole complicated situation that they were in and everything like that. It's like oh no, the gas tank is empty, and I was thinking to myself, but there's another DeLorean in a cave somewhere. Doesn't that have gas? There's no gas in that DeLorean in the cave. In the cave, at no moment did they mention he's got that giant machine to make that one ice cube and everything like that. And I suppose they're trying to imply that he used the gas to make his own combustible engines and so on and so forth. That's fine, except they established that all that was steam, so it wasn't that or anything. It just felt like there was a lot easier ways to get out of this situation, and that wasn't enough. Number one. Number two, I also kind of feel like they were retro in the second movie. I think I pointed this out when we reviewed it. Suddenly, I gave you no. They did it at the beginning of this movie. Excuse me. They pointed out, I put a full tank of gas into you. Where in the first movie is like, you're telling me this sucker is nuclear? No. This sucker's electrical. I just need a nuclear reaction to generate the 1.21 gigawatts of electricity. And I thought, at least the implication to me was that the car was not a gas vehicle, but an electric vehicle. That part of the conversion into a time machine made it into an electric vehicle. So the fact that all of a sudden gasoline is kind of a major importance to it to make it run, it kind of diminished it a little bit.
Yeah.
The Mr. Fusion thing that was introduced at the end of the first movie, it still seemed to imply to me that the vehicle was powered by electricity and not gas. So it just is a plot point that just stuck weird with me.
Well, here's what, I really did get confused when at the beginning of this one, when again, now they're back in 1955, the DeLorean, they find the DeLorean in a cave. In fact, I remember as the film opened, trying to remember, how did they get the car back? Because the car just went back to the... so when I saw them, he finds a note. It's in the cave. Okay, fine. But then when he takes the DeLorean back to 1855, I guess it was?
1885.
Yeah. How did they do that? Why was there no problem making that happen?
So the note talks about how the time when he arrived there, the time circuit was broken, and that there was nothing technologically that could fix it in this time. But he wrote up how to repair the circuit that would work with parts that you can get in 1955, and made that part of the note. That's why he couldn't come forward after that, because the lightning strike broke something. And
but why?
Yeah, no. Go ahead. Ask your question.
But what about the 1.21 gigawatts? How are they able to? I mean, the whole first film was, how can we get Back to the Future without plutonium? We need the lightning strike.
Oh, Mr. Fusion. I just mentioned it, Mr. Fusion.
So the car. All right. So the car he's got now, it's got Mr. Fusion. Everything is fine. Then why can't they just take off back again? Why the whole thing with the train?
Why doesn't it fly, is what you're saying?
Well, fly or just drive. Well, why? I mean, he literally just got in this car, drove it to end up in 1885.
I'm pretty sure the note said that the flight system is beyond repair. In the note, I'm pretty sure he said that. It's hard to say because I love Christopher Lloyd and everything like that, but man, he was reading that exposition dump like a freaking auctioneer, wasn't he?
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was an exposition dump, and because of that, it kind of diminished a little bit to me the power of the whole, the whole thing, because then it started adding artificial layers of not just urgency, but also challenges to have to overcome.
It's the last roundup.
Come on, run!
It's the final showdown,
Hey, lighten up, jerk!
where Marty makes a name for himself.
What's your name, dude?
Eastwood. Clint Eastwood.
What kind of stupid name is that?
Doc meets his mate.
You saved my life.
I'm a proud at your service.
And Tannen meets his match.
I'll hunt you and shoot you down like a duck.
You see, it's funny, and I think I remember when we were talking about either the first or second movie. I was talking about how every time we would go to see one of these movies, my brothers and I would end up, talking for hours afterwards about all the intricate details of how things would happen, how time travel would work, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that popped in my head as I'm watching this, when they're doing the thing with the train, I started to ask myself, is the point that the car has to literally be moving forward at 88, or could you just have it in the workshop and spin the tires that quickly? I mean, I think you have to physically be moving forward, I guess.
Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah, I don't know, but I guess so. Well, I guess that was my thing. Well, why? Like, does the car not drive forward? I mean, okay, because you said there's no gas. You hit the gas line, and that was it. All right, I guess it's making sense.
No, it's not really making sense. I'm not defending this craziness by any stretch of the imagination, my friend. It's they changed a little bit of the plot in order to fit into a level of urgency to keep them in the Old West longer than they needed to be. Okay, yeah. I refuse to believe that there wasn't still gas in the DeLorean that he put into the cave, that they then couldn't have siphoned out. Or at least they could have established that, hey, I used the gas in the thing to do some kind of thing to establish himself as a thing, or something along those lines. Anything that could have, at least given us a good reason why suddenly, gas was so gosh darn important. I mean, clever in the respect that, of course, it's the one thing you just can't get back in 1885. There's just no getting gasoline in 1885. Mm-hmm. So, fine and everything like that. But it feels hollow because of that. This is a beautiful movie that is empty. It has no real compelling enough plot, or at least no plot that holds it together. It is counting on nostalgia of a movie that's not even 5 years old, and then nostalgia of a movie that just came out a couple of months before this. Back to the Future 2 came out in November of 89. This came out in May of 1990. And the charm of the characters. And the charm of the characters help, but it doesn't overcome the weaknesses.
Yeah. It's funny too, because this is another film where I look at it and I ask myself, what's missing? Because honestly, the fact that they gave Doc Brown a love interest, you would think that would be kind of enough to kind of inject a little more heart into this film, but it doesn't quite work. I mean, it does give you some nice moments for sure. But yeah, it's something about it rings pretty hollow, and you're right. I don't know why that is exactly. Incidentally, and I noticed that, it's so funny. It's funny how we're sort of going through an era where there's a lot of complaints about there's not enough women in films, or not enough heroic women, et cetera, et cetera. And I still keep scratching my head, because every time I see a film that is genuinely lacking female presence, I feel like it's noticeable. And I kind of feel like Back to the Future 2 is one of those where Doc and Marty are off doing something, and that, again, that sort of heart and soul with the romance between the parents from the first one is gone, so that second one feels so much colder. And here we're getting a little something, but I kind of feel like it's weird how this character, the Mary Steenburgen character, Clara, she sort of feels like she's this real late in the day addition. And you sort of say to yourself, now that we're kind of into the third one of these, and again, I'm already complaining that we're doing the same jokes over and over, throwing her into the mix feels kind of odd. And it's like, it doesn't quite catch. And I can't really put my finger on why, because, I mean, they do give them a couple scenes where they're together and they're talking about books and so it's like, it's not for a lack of trying, like some films, like they'll just throw this in. Oh, look, they fell in love. We're done. Goodbye. Let's move forward. This one, I feel like they did flesh it out a little, but yeah, it's just, I don't know, for some reason, it feels kind of like too little too late or something. And I'm not really sure why it's not working.
It's really hard to pinpoint, man. I don't think it could possibly be overexposure or anything like that, because there had been a long gap in between.
Mm.
It just honestly, dude, I don't have a clue. Even as I was watching it again, I was trying to find something, because the thing is like, I don't even think it's like a terrible movie. It just is a bland movie.
Yeah.
I think it's what it is. It's like okay, it's like you go to a restaurant and you got this really well cooked steak. Like it is cooked exactly the way you like, the right amount of pink in it and everything like that. And the mashed potatoes are they look great. They're nice and they're nice and fluffy yet creamy and everything like that. And it's like they forgot to add salt.
Mm.
Yeah. And some people say, "Oh, you shouldn't add too much salt to steak," and that's a whole other debate. It has nothing to do with movie reviews, so we're not going to go into that right now. But the bottom line is there's a spark that's missing from this movie, and it was kind of like you could see the spark starting to fizzle in Back to the Future Part 2, and in this one, it's just I can't put my finger on what it is about it that just makes this feel so empty, and and just like spinning your wheels, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, it does. You're absolutely right. It's I think another reason why it sort of feels weird. Again, this film is really struggling to sort of find its tone. Because like it's funny because they like when Marty first goes back. I mean, he's dressed in the pink shirt. And obviously, like you took one look at him, you're like, oh, he's gonna stick out like a sore thumb. And sure enough, that's exactly what happens. It was a circus in town. And I thought it was clever because I mean they show him walking around town. It was funny. They very intentionally made you feel like I'll bet that place stinks because they kept showing the horse shit all over the place. People shoveling the horse crap, which I think makes some sense. So they tried to make it pretty grungy and real. But then they have Buford Mad Dog Tannen. Already again, it's like, oh brother, here we, you're kind of rolling your eyes, like, all right, here we go, fine, run with it. But again, he's this kind of rough and tough guy who would kill you at any second. And Marty at one point takes him out with a pie plate, and it's like so they're trying to sort of keep that kind of innocent cuteness of the first few films, but now you're tying it in with this kind of like realistic Old West situation. And again, I kind of find that I find it hard to sort of settle on where this tone is going. So yeah, it's a sort of weird amalgam of tone, I guess.
Michael J. Fox.
Where'd you learn to shoot like that?
7-Eleven.
Christopher Lloyd.
There's a fella that can't hold his liquor.
And Mary Steenburgen.
I never ever met a man like you before.
Gentlemen, excuse me, but my friend and I have to catch a train.
You know what? I don't know how much more we can say about it, and we're close enough to our time. Why don't we just put a bullet in this and get it done?
All right, who's going first?
You're going first. I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, this is a weird one. I think I settled on a 6. And maybe that's kind of rough. I feel like that's pretty harsh. I mean, in fact, actually, I'm going to take it back. I'm going to give it a 7. 6 is kind of difficult. I mean, again, 5 is my border of whether or not it's even worth watching. I feel like if you saw the first 2 and you haven't yet seen this, it's absolutely worth watching. You get your fix of Marty and Doc. They're working great together. They're still enjoyable to watch, and if you like some of the gags from the first one, you'll get a chuckle out of these, I suppose. But yeah, for me, it's a really forgettable film. I feel like the second one is a little more watchable, only kind of because it's kind of the more quirky, and it is taking more chances. Like it did sort of say, look, we're just gonna do the jokes again from the first one. We're gonna go to the future. We're gonna do all kinds of wacky stuff. And it's like, all right, fine. But then you get to this one, and it's like we're just gonna quickly get ourselves back to the Old West. And if the Old West ain't your cup of tea, then this movie isn't gonna be for you. But so yeah, I like I said, it's a really odd one. It's hard to really. It feels much smaller in scale than the first ones. Not a lot of heart, not a lot of soul, but enough things that you might get a kick out of. So yeah, I think a 7 is probably very fair. It's certainly not a bad film, but just really oddly forgettable.
Oddly forgettable is exactly what they should put on the back of the DVD box from us, because that's how I kind of feel about it. It's like I kind of sort of enjoyed myself, but not completely. I liked a lot of the visuals, but wondered what it was all about. Barely strung together pieces. I'm not sure. I complained about that with Wonder Woman, but the difference here is that there's this great history that you have going on. You've got these great characterizations going on, and I guess a part of me is kind of like, well, I guess it can be fun. I also gave it a 7 because I didn't hate it. It wasn't like an excruciating experience. It just wasn't a satisfying one. Like my analogy I was saying earlier, a very well-presented plate of food that just was bland. And there's no going back from a bland meal. It's as simple as that. I wanted to like it a lot more than it actually turned out to be. And that's what made me sad. And I'm kind of glad that Zemeckis and Gale have said, they're not going to do any more sequels or anything along those lines, because I kind of feel like, what? This is enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. It's at the end of the day, it feels like reheated leftovers and kind of tastes like it.
Reheated leftovers. I like that. All right. Well, who asked you? I'm going to take this one. I'm going to go first because you did the score. I'll start this one off. Okay. It's funny how when it comes to the thing that I would change, I wouldn't even know where to start. I suppose maybe not having the urgency and the danger feel so artificially generated, and that's really what it boils down to with me with a lot of this, is that the sense of urgency and danger just feels artificial. It doesn't feel natural, even with all these things that are watching it. But you know what really bothered me, and it bothered me since the second one, the chicken character arc.
Oh, yes. that took me a second, but now yes, okay, got it.
Oh, that's why I held for a second. It's like, he's going to get it. He's totally going to get what I'm getting at.
Hear a little ding. Yeah.
The whole chicken character arc was like, what was that all about? Introduced in the second movie, what's the matter, Marty? You're chicken, and all of a sudden, da-da-da! And, Marty turns around, slowly I turn, inch by inch, step by step. And it's like, what? In the second one, I was like, what is that? It's like, well, I guess they're going to pay off somehow. And it's like, oh, there's the payoff. What's the matter, Marty? You chicken? There's his future right there, and he turns his back on his future. Wow.
Yeah, boy, I'm with you 1,000%. I honestly, when they brought that up in the second one, it really just felt. I mean, and by the way, that I'm pretty sure that goes back to Rebel Without a Cause. James Dean. There's a scene in Rebel Without a Cause where somebody calls him chicken and he kind of flips his wig. Oh, are you talking to me? Whatever. So I remember when I saw this one going, are they trying to? I mean, it was really weird. Like I thought they were trying to interject a little James Dean into his character, and then I thought, well, I mean, it's like now Marty has this kryptonite. Like we have to give characters some sort of a kryptonite, some sort of a weakness that we can exploit. But yeah, you're absolutely right. They kind of just put that aside, and then they get to. I mean, right. I didn't see anything in the movie to make it feel like he conquered that particular demon. Mm-hmm. So when it actually came, and somebody called him chicken for a race. And first of all, again, I get it. You have to tie up all the loose ends before the end of the movie. literally, this just felt like at the literal almost end of the movie, we have to have the scene to explain it, and we just do in the most boring, lackluster way possible. And it's like, wow, Marty's life almost came to an end if it wasn't for that or something. Or it was like, oh brother, here we go. So yeah, I was kind of, there's so many weird little when you start to get into all these time traveling things, because then my brain goes to the "you're fired" on the facts, and it's only after that the thing disappears. Well, Marty just went to the Old West. He just went to the 1800s. That could have maybe shaken loose the "you're fired" or whatever. I don't know. I'm baffled at this point, but it's sort of illustrating just how kind of off the rails things are starting to get at this point in the franchise.
Agreed. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for agreeing with me, sir. Yes. Thank you.
Wholeheartedly. For me, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of little things I could probably talk about, and a couple of them. I mean, again, it's sort of the whole weird tone of the film. There's not a lot in here that really kind of rubbed me funny. I can't think of one specific thing I would take out. I mean, honestly, it's like, I just feel like this film doesn't know what it wants to be. It just sort of feels more like a kind of generic Robert Zemeckis movie, not so much a Back to the Future movie. I guess if I have to pick anything, how about this? I'll give it to the scene where Biff walks into the bar and says, "Hey, McFly," because I mean, I think at that point that was probably the moment of the film where I kind of just sort of went, "Oh, we're doing this again," and not just that scene. "Oh, we're doing this again," but I mean, I feel like for the whole thing, like I felt like that's when it just sort of tipped me off. This whole film is going to be like the last one, where we're going to replay every scene that we saw from the last. Like, we're just going to repeat the same bits again. And so, yeah, and honestly, I mean, seriously, and even the scene right after that, where they're dragging Marty around behind the horse, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, this is like that scene where he was on the skateboard and then the hoverboard, except this one we're going to actually literally drag him to his death. So yeah, not quite as fun. So I kind of felt like I really felt like that was sort of the point in the movie where I was really starting to feel like this was an empty exercise, and I've seen it all before. I don't need to see it again, and my patience was really starting to wane. So I'll leave it at that.
Good enough for me, man. Well, then I'm really going to love to hear for your consideration.
I think that one's easier. I'll give it to the train sequence, because honestly, I felt like it took 2 hours or however long to get to this point. But by the time we got here, I did perk up, and I was feeling like, all right, now I'm kind of with it. I'm on board again. I liked where that was headed. It did have good tension. I'm never crazy about oh, she slipped. Oh, her dress caught. Oh, rip. Like, it rips in slow motion for 10 minutes. Never crazy about that, but otherwise, I thought the whole thing was good. And by the way, I will give it to the idea. I did sort of like the playing with the idea of Doc staying in this time period. I kind of was like, I think I kind of liked that. I felt like it added a little layer of complexity. And honestly, I sort of felt like this is basically, Doc kind of confronting his own theories about the space-time continuum and affecting the future. What does it mean if he stays here, etc., versus him finding love. I did think that was sort of a worthy conversation. And I kind of felt like when the film ended and like when Doc went back to rescue Clara, and then it started to become clear he wasn't going to be able to make it back into the car, and he just sort of like went off with her, and Marty went home. And I kind of was, I sort of felt like I liked that. That was like a bittersweet conclusion to that. And I kind of felt like it did sort of add a slight layer of complexity to the whole thing. So I want to give it to that. I thought that was the climax was well done. And the part where Doc stays behind, I thought was actually a little improvement on it.
Which would have been my other Who Asked You. Now that you mention it, I did love the train sequence, and I did love that little, surprise of Doc staying in the past. Don't get me wrong. But I think my other Who Asked You would have been, and I should have mentioned this, that then they completely, nullify that sacrifice, the whole sacrifice. Marty sacrificing the time machine because Doc says time is too dangerous to mess with. And then 5 minutes later, after he has his epiphany, oh, just kidding. We got a train time machine now.
Yeah.
And we all went to the future.
Yeah. I did. I said to myself, honestly, I mean, I kind of felt like, it's funny because we had the first film with the ending where it's like, no, we got to go to the future, and he flies into the screen, and we all kind of look back on that as just a fun little add-on. Well, then we find out in the second one that fun little add-on has ramifications, and now they had to do a whole sequel to just that little afterthought. So we kind of went back on it. Then suddenly they do the same thing at the end of this one. And it was almost like, yeah, that makes sense. But now what? Do we watching the train fly, I thought was a little dopey. It was like, I mean, seriously, if Doc really went to the future, would you really soup up a train engine, or would you just build something from scratch? So again, just good for a chuckle, but yeah, a little weird.
Very weird, actually. No, I'm not going to. Yeah. This is sad that I feel this way, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for my consideration, I kind of feel the same way about the train scene, so I'm cool with that. I'm throwing this one out here. I'm throwing one to Thomas F. Wilson, because I don't think he gets enough credit for just the glory of all that is Biff Tannen. And I just want to give it to him, just this once,
Nice. And I'll agree with you there too. I kind of felt like he probably is. I mean, honestly, he's the only other player in this that is in all of the films. So it's kind of funny that he's. Well, actually, I take it back. There's the guy who plays the principal. He's there, but he's in the background. It's clever.
Screw that guy.
No, you're right. I mean, he is sort of the kind of the anchor holding all this stuff together. He's the only other part of this that stays pretty consistent. So I could see that, and he's playing it to the hilt.
Yeah, and he's having a blast. So good for him. I'm just good for him. That's the way I look at it. Good for him.
This summer, Steven Spielberg and Robert Zemeckis invite you.
Come on, Marty!
To the Rough Rider, Rip Roaring, Rootin' Tootin', Straight Shootin'.
Just a hold up!
It's a science experiment!
Rousing conclusion of Back to the Future.
Let the festivities begin!
Back to the Future, Part 3.
And thus closes the Back to the Future series. But next week, ladies and gentlemen, next week, Joe and I are about to boldly go. Oh, are we about to boldly go? With the craptastic Discovery hitting its season finale last night, we're going to watch some classic Trek, ladies and gentlemen. Joe and I are going to start the original, the Kirk Star Trek series. Not the Kelvin series, the original Kirk Star Trek series. Star Trek The Motion Picture, Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, Voyage Home, Final Frontier, Undiscovered Country. 6 weeks of pure Trek.
I got to tell you, I'm looking forward to this too, because this will be a nice, I don't know if palate cleanser is the right word, but honestly, I kind of, my inner Trekkie has been sort of sparked lately. And I took a trip just recently, a few months ago, with a few friends to see the, up in upstate New York. They do this replica of the sets of the original series, and it's spectacular.
Yes, I've heard that's amazing. Yeah. Lucky you, man.
Yeah, it's very cool. So yeah, I'm looking forward to again tapping into my inner Trekkie.
Sweet. So am I, man, because you know I'm a big ass Trek. Big ass Trek. Oh, that just sounded bad. Hey, man, excellent show. I kind of enjoyed reviewing Cobra Kai more than Back to the Future, but hey.
Same here. It's funny how our 80s nostalgia works. It was the tribute show that we liked better than the actual 80s movie, but although technically it was a 90s movie, but anyway.
But you know what? At least it shows that we are not blinded by the weaknesses in the 80s, or in this case, the 90s.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, partner. Well, again, this was another great one. Thank you, my friend, so much, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
I am too, sir. Thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for just being you. Happy New Year. Thank you that you're safe. Thank you that you're healthy.
Thank you, sir. And with that, I will see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode, and be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube for spoiler-free reviews of new releases. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider becoming a Patreon. You can find our page on patreon.com/reviewswithoutremorse, one word. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are for commentary and critique and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.